Welcome back to this latest episode of Japan's Top Business Interviews. I'm your host, Dr. Greg Story, President of Dale Carnegie Tokyo Training. My special guest today is Maxime Hotelier, who is the General Manager of the Klimpton Hotel here in Tokyo, in Shinjuku. Maxime, welcome.
Greg, thank you for having me. How are you?
Great pleasure. We met each other last year, and it's taken us a little while to set this up, so I'm really pleased we could finally get our schedules to match up. That's great. But how is it that you've come to be the General Manager of the Klimpton Hotel here in Shinjuku? Give us a bit of your backstory on your career so far.
Sure, thank you very much. Well, long story short, I've been in Japan 20 years and 2 months. So it's been already 2 decades that I'm in Japan, and I'm 42. So I came here at quite an early age. And actually, it came it came by a coincidence of my profession at that time. I was working for a Michelin star restaurant back to my time in France. And as 3 Michelin star, that the Grand Chef happened to open a restaurant in Hokkaido, in the northern part of Japan. And he asked me if I was willing to have a different experience, right? And
this is up in Niseko?
That was in Toyo, which is actually right now the Windsor Hotel Toyo, a Vignette Collection hotel with IHG. At that time, that was a different group. But then the restaurant was located inside this beautiful resort, and I was like, where is Hokkaido? Where is Japan? And I had absolutely no idea where the country was. So I was looking at the map, and I was like, sure, let's go, And I found myself back to 2004, coming to Japan in Hokkaido for my restaurant manager position, my very first one. And went my way through, actually, first in Hokkaido for 6 years, and then after that in Tokyo for now 14 years. So,
So this hotel is, from what period did you come here? How long ago did you
here at Klimpton is actually much more recent. It's back to the pre-opening phase, which is August 2019.
So which hotel were you in before that?
Before that, I was at a headquarters of IHG, based in Toranomon, at the office, and I was looking after the performance of the food and beverage in the country, right, for managed properties. Okay. And I had a different experience before that, because I was working in beverage industry for another group, Pernod, Ricard, which is one of the leader in beverage industry. And so from Michelin restaurant to beverage industry, and then hotel industry. So everything is complementary. I mean, everything makes sense in the way that there is a connection between all those industries, but they are quite different actually in terms of networking, in terms of leadership, in terms of responsibilities as well, in terms of missions, right? So 5 years ago, when I joined Klimpton from the call of my previous CEO with the IHG, I was very excited to bring to life for the first time in Japan a luxury and lifestyle hotel. And that's the first Klimpton and the only Klimpton at dates here in Japan. We've got some others coming in the future, of course, but at that time there was a very big challenge, and obviously the timing was quite delicate because of the COVID that came right after, right? So we finally opened the hotel in 2020 October, and that was already a big milestone.
2020 October, that's like
how ideal is
right in COVID, by October, everyone's worked out, this is seriously bad.
That was seriously bad.
People are dying around. Italy, for example, old people are dying in droves. America, they're dying in droves. And it's like scaring the hell out of everyone. So very delicate time to open up a brand new hospitality-based people industry. That's a tough one. Yeah,
that was a tough one to manage, actually, expectations and emotions and the reality of the environment, because we were all in the same on the same boat, and but we had a professional challenge, and we had a professional mission to keep, which was to open Klimpton anyway. So we did, of course, not with the noise we wanted to make at the time, because that was very limited, but we did very successfully. And now 5 years ago, we're happy to see the performance going up and to see a strong positioning behind the brand. So.
I think you remember Michel, who was running the A&A Hotel in Akasaka, right?
Absolutely.
We talked to him occasionally. And in those days before COVID, the place was buzzing, It's really good occupancy, the restaurants, everything's doing well. Then COVID hit, you could fire a gun in the
Yeah.
lobby area, not hit anybody, or the main restaurant, not hit anybody. It was devastating. So tough time. And for you, you've gone from a job overseeing all of the F&B performance across the country to actually running your own property. That's a big change. But let's go back a little bit to when you first came, when you started being responsible for teams up in Hokkaido. You probably hadn't had a lot of, I'm guessing, a lot of leadership experience up until that point, right? You were being led, you're a good follower. What was challenging or what was different for you coming into Hokkaido, into that property, and then actually having a team that you were responsible for?
Yeah, that was, I mean, when I think about my time in Hokkaido, I feel like it's been 20 years, and actually it is, but I feel it could be yesterday. Mm-hmm. And I can still see the young leader that I was at the time when I first arrived in Japan at 22 with my little experience. But I had the trust and the confidence of Michel Brass, actually the famous Grand Chef, that gave me this mission to bring his DNA, his touch, his signature into his restaurant in Japan. And I was like, yeah, sure, of course, for you I will do it, but I don't speak any Japanese. I don't know the codes. I don't know the culture. And I don't even know where the country is on the map, as I said. And I really insist, I had absolutely no idea. And Japan was not necessarily a dream for me. It was not necessarily, the place I wanted to go.
You weren't growing up doing this sort of anime thing like a lot of
well,
people.
like any kids of my generation, right? Obviously. But no, I was more like about pursuing my career path and ambition, maybe in France or somewhere else. Mm-hmm. But Japan, no, definitely not. So when I first arrived, I found myself working with an executive chef, both of us very passionate. We knew each other from the original restaurant in France. That was very helpful. But then we trusted each other right away. Why? Because we came to Japan for Michel Brass. Mm-hmm. So we had a mission and we were passionate about Michel Brass as a chef, as a brand, as a gastronomic experience. And we arrived in Japan with this expertise and this knowledge about the chef, right? Mm-hmm. And then I discovered a whole new world. And I was like, well, if I want to implement a little bit of what Michel Brass wants me to implement, mm-hmm. I will need to work around a lot of things, which is culture, codes. Mm-hmm. And most importantly, I would say language.
In terms of leadership, though, right? Because you don't have a strong leadership background at that point. So you're learning to become a leader. And undoubtedly, like me, when I learned to become a leader, made a lot of mistakes, and realized later, well, that probably wasn't my best choice of decision there. And what things did you learn early on as a leader from, finding your way through?
At that time, everything was new, right? So obviously, as you said, I was making a lot of mistakes. And you know what? I don't regret any of them because first of all, that was me. And then it showed also not vulnerability, but it showed that I was honest with myself and I was trying to get the best of everyone and the best of the situation as well. And I was trying to work towards our goals, right? Mm-hmm. So, it requires a lot of humility to work in Japan when you first arrive, when you don't know the culture, when you don't speak the language that I do now. But then at that time, I was just like, well, you know what? I came for a specific mission, and I'm the one who knows the most about this chef. Mm-hmm. So how do we find this delicate harmony between what I know, what I can do, and what is required in Japan to succeed as a leader? Mm-hmm. And I started to work on myself, and try to work on the language skills, first of all, show interest in anything about culture. Show interest in people as well. I mean, without people, you don't go nowhere, right? And especially in Japan, bringing a foreign leader into the country must have something special. I mean, this leader must have specific skills to show, specific expertise, and he must have something specific to teach people around. But it doesn't mean he knows everything. So he's got to show also the agility, the flexibility, and the humility to learn as much as he teaches, right?
I'm just thinking, listening to you, you're speaking to me in English. Your English is absolutely excellent.
Oh, thank you. For a French guy, it's not bad.
Well, I'm guessing at 22, it probably wasn't as well developed as it is today. So I'm imagining you come here, you don't speak Japanese at all. Your English is probably not fully developed. So you've really got two language barriers in a way, haven't you? Because those who speak English in the hotel, well, their English is probably not that good either, and they're developing as well. So it's really quite a complex area around understanding of what actually you want, and their understanding of what they're supposed to do, and your understanding what you think they're doing. So how did you bridge through getting people to actually be clear about what they need to do? Because I found in Japan, they're all going, and they haven't got a clue what I'm talking about, but they're saying yes, but actually it's not yes. And then you discover, what happened about that project? Nothing's happened about that project. You realize, oh, okay, something's not working in the communication here, and you're going to go back and fix it. So you're struggling with two different language issues, I would suggest, which is even doubly difficult compared to anyone else.
That's a fantastic question, and that's a tough one, actually, because you're absolutely right. When I first arrived in Japan, I spoke French, obviously, and German. But I didn't really speak English, right? The very basic level. And I didn't speak any Japanese at all. So I didn't have those weapons with me to actually drive and lead people. So what I did instead is to get hands-on, get involved with my team in the operation, show what I want rather than saying what I want. And I've been trying to, the easy phrase, leading by example, I think is key.
What would be an example in a hotel where you would do that? Are you talking about how we're going to lay out the restaurant, or how we're going to lay out the table, or how we're going to lay out the food, or when you talk about lead by example, hands-on, what does that mean?
Well, lead by example for me, it's not telling people what I want them to do. It's doing things with them so they understand what I want.
So
right?
What's an example?
So an example of that would be the engagement that I expect them to have with our customers.
Okay.
So for instance, at Klimpton, Shinjuku, Tokyo, like any Klimpton in the world, we have what we call a social hour. And every night it's a wine hour, right? And for 1 hour, we actually invite anyone staying at Klimpton to have a drink, and it's on us. And at this moment, me as a general manager, but also some of my directors or managers, actually come to the social hour and engage with the guest. And that's a moment we get a glass of wine for ourselves and we go and cheers with everyone. We sit with the kids and play with them. We hug a dog when someone brings one. And we talk with people around and we say, well, where are you from? And we engage, and we get to know each other. But in Japan, you can imagine that at first that was not an easy exercise. And there was something a little bit like, not intangible, but that was just like social hour. Okay, it's a drinking time for the guest. No, not at all. It's not a drinking time. It's a communication time. It's an exchange. It's an engagement time between the guest and us. Because our hotel is not just a place to stay and sleep. And the restaurant is not just a place to go and eat. It's a place where we connect, and it's a place where we meet new people and we actually get to know each other, right? And the only way to get your people on board is to actually show what you expect. So that's one of the best example I can find is engagement with our guests is, spending time with them, being with them. And more than this, it's not being reactive to whatever they need. It's actually be proactive because you get information before or you have enough empathy to understand, to read through and find a way to answer to their needs before they ask them. They ask for them, right? So
yeah, interesting, because in my experience, Japanese service across the board is good. It's very polite. It's very respectful. It's very efficient. And you could be very happy with that compared to many foreign countries where it's not so great. However, I always feel it's rather impersonal. There's a barrier between the person who's in the serving position and the person receiving. And this is part of the hierarchy of Japan, where the guest is up here and we're down here. So there has to be that gap. But what you're talking about is more trying to connect at the human level on
Correct.
The same level. So I imagine for Japanese, that's quite a stretch. I mean, I'm going to be talking to them at the same level, but they're the guest up here and I should be a bit hesitant to get that close or be that forward to be speaking with them as an equal. Whereas I'm coming from Australia, where Australian service people would have no hesitation in treating me like an equal. They don't have that hierarchy of the guests is up, because the Australian ethos is we're all equal, and they treat you like that. So they're very easy to personally connect with you down there, I noticed. But up here, I always feel that polite but impersonal gap. So what you're doing is rather unique in Japan, I would think.
Yeah, and yeah, thank you for that. It's actually a very thoughtful question, because when I look back at my 20 years in Japan, I've been trying to identify, what is actually the level of service in Japan? What is the level of hospitality that everybody talks about in the world? And we all know the courtesy and the quality of the service in Japan. But service is the word. In Japan, it always remains a service, right? And if you talk to someone who is used to the hotel industry, he will talk as a Japanese person, most likely as a service hotel, full service hotel, right? With Japanese restaurant or Chinese restaurant and everything that you need to actually stay in a hotel. But it doesn't go beyond your expectations. And that's why here at Klimpton, we're trying to replace the word service hotel or full service hotel by experience hotel. Okay. And I think it's very important to understand that service is what is required based on what the people pay for, right? Experience is what they pay for and beyond. And it's something that becomes memorable, but it requires a lot of energy and it requires a lot of consistency as well in the delivery, right? And so I think it's very important to keep this in mind. And to your point about the level of service, I think we all agree to say that in Japan, the level of service is amazing. But I would be very specific in this space. I would say that the standard is always very high in Japan. Then the top is high, but never go exceptional. Rarely. It goes sometimes, of course, depending on the place. You can find some very typical Japanese establishment where the level is absolutely amazing, but it's rare. When abroad, I would say, if I take my country, for example, in France, where the gastronomy and the service is very famous, right, worldwide, I would say that actually the standard service is a disaster. The level is very, very low. But it can go to very, very high. It can go to some height that you don't necessarily experience in Japan, because I think we take the experience to the next level. So I think the gap is different. There is less gap in Japan.
Interesting, when I go to Japanese only, usually business events, might be the Chamber of Commerce or something similar like that, and everyone's together. And after the speeches, they go to have the drinks and the food, right? Everyone's standing around. Now, they only talk to the people they know. So if I meet you and you're talking to someone, you introduce me to them. Yeah. But they don't go up to each other and introduce themselves. It's very standoffish, And I think to myself, okay. So I teach my team, when we go to these events, we walk up to people and we give them our card and we meet them. We don't wait to be introduced. And so, I know I'm a foreigner, so maybe when I walk up to them, it's a bit shocking anyway that a foreigner's approaching me, because they're wondering, can I speak in English? And I speak in Japanese, so they relax. And then I become like the battering ram for my team to come in and then engage them. But there is that standoffishness, I think, with people you don't know. So what you're talking about with guests, you don't know the guest. To get the Japanese mindset to go beyond that standoffishness, which is built into the culture, to become, okay, I'm a person who's going to provide experience at the exceptional level here. That means I have to get close to you. I have to be able to walk up to somebody I don't know and have a conversation and get that mindset shift. So I guess, is it a case of you are selecting people who've got that in them, or are you training people, or is it a bit of both? But I'm just wondering, is it nature or nurture here, in terms of how to get Japanese to make that switch?
Yeah, so, it's a very broad question, actually. I could take a day to talk about this. But if I start with recruitment process, for example, we tend to look at individuals that have the mindset for growth and that have a personality that suggests that they will be engaging, which is not always easy to find, right? But diversity is also key to Klimpton to make it work and to make it successful. 60% of our staff are Japanese, 40% are foreigners.
That's a big proportion.
We have 19 nationalities.
Oh,
We've got
so you read
48% of women,
Yeah.
50% of men, and 2% of non-gender. So, I mean, we do support D&I in the same way we do support LGBTQ. I mean, we try to bring this to the next level in the way that diversity is definitely where we feel there is the best opportunities for not only for our business but also for our people, right? So yeah, no, absolutely. It's the first step, I would say, in the recruitment, is to look at people through the resume, not only in their past experience, but also how well they can do as an individual with Klimpton and how well they will fit within the existing team. That's also super important to keep the balance and the harmony, right? And then trainings happen. We have this culture here at Klimpton, for instance, to have 1 day, 1 training. And it's not for everybody, obviously, because with 140, 150 colleagues, it's a little bit difficult. But then it's 1 day, 1 training in the way that every day something is happening around skills, around knowledge, around attitude, around self-improvement, around leadership. And we are trying to...
This must be difficult because you're a shift work-based 24-hour-a-day hotel.
Sure.
So when, you say we have 1 day, 1 training, most people are going, oh yeah, that's easy. But for you, it's like
it's
we've
not
got
easy.
3 shifts and we've got people in different sections and how we're going to get the logistics to make sure they all get trained. I mean, in a hotel, that is an incredibly complex exercise.
Yeah, it is. But to us, this is the only way to keep people engaged. And that's also, we believe, a good way to stimulate people, right? And to keep them on top of themselves and eager to learn, eager to improve themselves, right? So yes, it's a lot of energy, it's a lot of organization and planning, but actually we keep it also short, efficient in small groups.
Okay.
We never have like 1 training per day with 50 people for 2 hours. It doesn't work. It doesn't have any impact on no one. And it's tiring and it's boring. So we keep it short, efficient in the way that it's usually no more than 45 minutes for a training, and it would be maybe 5 or 6 people max. And we make sure that depending on the nature of the training, but it could be the same people from the same department, or it could be different people from different departments for more leadership or management training, right? So, but training is definitely part of the culture here, and I don't think we do enough. Even if we do 1 a day, I think training should be, it should be the key. It's the key for me. Yeah, absolutely.
And in your experience in Japan, from when you're in Hokkaido and, this 14 years in Tokyo, what have you found works well to get the team engaged, to follow your direction, to follow your ideas and strategy? What's worked well for you?
From my side as a leader, I would say, first of all, to engage with them. In the same way I want them to engage with the guest, I need to engage with them.
And what does that mean?
And what does that mean?
At the actual practical level.
Sure. Every day, a simple routine. When I arrived, I go and say hi to everyone, one by one. And, I don't have 2,000 employees, so it's realistic.
But you've got, 140?
But I've got 140, 150 here at Klimpton.
Let me guess, 140 people, even 1 minute each. That's a big chunk of the day. Minutes, right?
You always have people, right? And you've got AM shift and you've got PM shift. But the thing is that visibility, being visible myself, I think it's important to keep people engaged and to know I'm around. When I'm off, I'm off. And I'm not expecting them to come on the day off and say hi. It's not the point. The point is to recognize them and say, hey, I'm here today. And by the way, if you need anything, I'm here. And how are you? You changed your hair color. And you bought new glasses or whatever, or you're back from holidays. And I think this small touch is a beginning of engagement and connection, just for them to feel recognized and to feel part of something, to feel part of a unit, right? Of a team.
That's a good point, because often for Japan, the classic image is the salary man, which actually is a gender-neutral expression in Japan, means women too. It means salaried employee who turns up, works long hours, do their job, and then they do it without much enthusiasm. They're like robots or drones, and they're just working hard. And to have that sense that actually what I'm doing counts is not well developed in a lot of Japanese companies. Like, I'm doing it through, this is my obligation, my duty, but understanding my component, the work that I do, how that fits into the bigger picture, often there's a disconnect. And so one of the tasks in Japan for leaders is to make sure, as you're doing, that that person feels recognized, that the task they're doing has value and it's appreciated, and you're an important person around here and we really need you to have that emotional connection to the job, as opposed to it's just a job. I get paid, I turn up. So this is interesting what you're saying, to actually have that personal touch with this person, to bring them into the feeling of you are an important cog in this big wheel we're all part of here. That's very good.
And to take time to celebrate as well, and to recognize the wins of people, right? And to make a big deal about it, you know, so people feel recognized. But I think it's also, it comes from the top, right? And obviously as a GM, I carry on the vision of my business unit, financially speaking, but also socially speaking as well, right? And then this culture, without no one around me, doesn't go nowhere, right? So I need my team to actually embrace my vision, and I need them to buy. I need their buying, right? And to do that, you've got to express yourself, you've got to engage, and you've got to explain yourself, not justify yourself, explain yourself. And you've got to understand their needs as well, so they can achieve your vision, right? So spending time with them is a must. Well, I'm not part-time here, right? So it requires to be here, right? But I love doing here. I love doing it because it's my team, and we are all together on the same boat. But then the culture is a big thing, right? And though I am the one who create and bring the culture into this business unit, I need my direct report, like my directors, to be on board and to understand what I want and to embrace it, right?
And that's a key point, isn't it?
Yes.
Often I find as a training company, we will go to a corporate headquarters, we'll go to a training room or a venue, and they'll have on the wall, framed behind the glass, you know, vision, mission, values, all this sort of stuff, right? So take it off the wall, turn it around, they can't see it. What's the vision of this company? 30 people in the class, mind you. No one's got a clue.
Oh.
What's the mission?
That's interesting.
Nothing. Usually they have 5 values. 30 people collectively, they get 2, maybe 3 of the values. And I think to myself, right, the people sitting on the top floor of this building, the executive suite, are all imagining that every single person here understands the vision, mission, values of this company. But in reality, they can't remember them. So I don't know how you live them if you can't remember them. So there's always a big disconnect, I find, between what the top is thinking is happening and is actually what is happening. And I think it's not picking on anyone. This is also, every company has the same issues, that make sure that the people do understand clearly and then follow it and then live it, you know. So interesting how you're approaching that. How do you get them to really live the ideas? Like I'm talking about your direct reports, because they're the conduit for you through to their team members. So if they get it and they pass it on, that's great. But often the people in the middle are not great conduits in Japan. I use the analogy or metaphor of a building with a concrete floor and a concrete ceiling. And the information comes from above to these people in the middle, but they don't pass it on. It's like they're the concrete floor. They don't pass it down. They absorb it and they keep it as a strength or a control or whatever. But you imagine it's going down, it isn't going down. So how do you make sure that your direct reports are really pushing what you're suggesting in terms of culture and value and the ideas down to the people at the bottom? What's worked well to do that?
Well, yeah, exactly. I don't know how people do usually other hotels or other businesses, you know, other industries, but I know that what I have noticed over the past few years of being a leader is that you can't force people to embrace your vision. So you've got to find a way to make them accept what you have in mind. But it has to be a compromise somehow. If I have my vision of what this business unit should be and the way I want it to be, I need to educate my direct report, my directors, and I need to explain what I have in mind and the way I see it, right? But then they are the specialists in their own respective areas, right? Whether it is finance, HR, commercial, or operation. I'm a generalist, right? So I carry the vision, I bring it to the next, I bring the business unit to the next level, but then they deliver somehow. So I need the buy-in. And I think it's important to keep the 80-20 rules to say that 80%, if 80% of my vision is implemented, I win. Mm-hmm. But the 20%, it's for them to decide what they want to do. Mm-hmm. So the culture becomes theirs, mm-hmm. and they feel like they made it, and they feel that they created it. Mm-hmm. It's not even tricky. It's not even manipulating people or anything. Mm-hmm. It's always straightforward, honest, and clear. Mm-hmm. It's just that I can't force people to be like me or to think like me. Mm-hmm. They may have a different vision because they know what is realistic in their own respective areas that I don't necessarily know because I'm not a specialist. But I have the big vision and the big picture of what it should look like. Then, because they trust me and because we have this relationship between each other, they will find a way to apply and to implement as much as they can. And if we get to 80%, I'm happy.
If you want to be successful as a leader, do the Leadership Training for Managers course. All companies need people who can both manage and lead. Leading people screams out for real skills in communication, dealing with all different types of people, being excellent at innovation, planning, delegation, handling mistakes, doing performance reviews really well, and inspiring and motivating the team. Do the Leadership Training for Managers course now in either Japanese or English. Leading is easy. Getting people to follow is the hard part. That is a great quote from Yogi Berra. Surprisingly, despite the complexities of leading here in Japan, everyone has to work it out by themselves. Foreign leaders want practical, applicable, expert advice. This is now available for the first time in history. Grab your copy of Japan Leadership Mastery on Amazon today and avoid the mystery, trial and error, especially the errors. That part about the culture is interesting because you have, usually in organizations, you have the corporate culture, you're a global organization, so there's a global cultural overlay. And then within that, in each country, you've got the culture of that country, and then you've got the culture of the leader. So you're sort of driving different layers of culture down through the organization. And what you just said is interesting because what you're saying is you're allowing your direct reports to also bring their culture
Absolutely.
As individuals into how they drive it down as well. So it all has to line up. If your culture is antithetical to the corporate culture, you'll be out of a job. And the same thing if their culture is antithetical to your culture, they'll be out of a job. So it's all got to align.
Alignment, absolutely.
But it's interesting that you give them that freedom to express their version of the culture within the certain framework. That's very good.
Let's say that I give them some space for being themselves. And part of the motto of Klimpton is actually be yourself, lead yourself, and make it count. That's our motto, right, at Klimpton. Not only Shinjuku, but Klimpton as a brand. And I think it's very important to give people space for themselves, for their own creativity, but also for their own expertise. Because otherwise, I don't need an HR. I don't need a finance. I can do myself if I'm that good. But I'm not that good, unfortunately. So I need them.
Probably a bit busy as well.
And a bit busy as well. And I think micromanagement is very dangerous. And it could be very tricky for the business and for people. So, empowering people is absolutely the key, and it starts with my director. And once we get alignment between each other, then I know that they understand my vision, and I know they will make sure to stick to it as much as they can with their respective teams. And this is where we win.
What about in the case of when there are mistakes or errors, often...
Which happens,
right? I mean, you've got many moving parts in a hotel, a hugely complex logistical exercise for anyone to try and, lead. And often you have at the sort of top level, oh yes, we see mistakes as a learning opportunity. That's like the kanban, this is the headline. But in reality, they don't treat people like that, they're bawling them out, yelling at them, you stupid idiot, what have you done, So there's a big gap between what they're saying and what they're actually doing. So how do you treat mistakes? Because you were talking before about trust, you're talking about engagement, you're talking about bringing people with you, explaining the vision, all good. But what happens when they screw it up? What happens, or you find, I thought they're going to zig, but actually they've zagged and it's the wrong direction. How do you deal with that?
I think my reaction will depend on how much ownership the person who made a mistake has. So if, as an example, there is a big mistake happening in the rooms department, for example, and I sit with my director of rooms and she doesn't acknowledge it. She doesn't reflect on it. And when I ask her feedback, what she thinks about and how she thinks she should fix it, and there is no answer, or she denies, or she hides or runs away, then for me it will be a different level of problem as just a pure mistake, right? I think ownership is the key. And in the same way, ultimately, the responsibilities come to me, right? As a GM, I have the ultimate responsibilities and I'm 100% okay with that. And I will take any responsibilities for any mistakes of my team. But as a matter of improvement and trying to look for a better tomorrow, we've got to identify the mistake. We've got to understand where it's coming from. What are all the related components so we can work on it, not only with the person who made the mistake, but also as a team. And creating a safe environment where people feel okay to say it, to speak up, to acknowledge a mistake, I think is very difficult. But it's also key to avoid the same mistake next time and avoid many other mistakes. And I'm not saying it's easy all the time, I've got a lot of foreigners in my team. I've got a lot of Japanese as well in the leadership team. And it's not always easy to make people speak about and acknowledge a mistake and recognize or admit something. But I do myself as well. If I make a mistake and if I actually realize that I was wrong somewhere, I also need to apologize. I also need to apologize and take actions, not just to say, oh, well, I made a mistake. Sorry, guys. Well, okay, that's fine. But then what do we do? Because we need to reassure people and we need to make sure that we don't make the same mistake again and that we learn from it, right? So I think reflecting on what we did, right or wrong, because we want to capitalize on what has been working well and we want to avoid what has been working bad. So I think it's very important to reflect individually as a team and to keep the focus going on, right? So
and people, I always say that Japanese employees are all boss watchers at an extremely advanced level, and so they are studying us very minutely. Is Greg in a good mood today? Is Greg in a bad mood today? Can I bring up this project with him today or not? They're looking at me and things go wrong. They're watching me. How does he handle this? How does he treat people when they screw it up, right? So if I say, oh, Dale Cunning, it's all peace and love, and then I'm screaming at people, they say, well, that'll be me next. And then the trust is not there, right? And they're watching very carefully, particularly when things don't go well, how things are handled, right? So that's something we have to be very careful, I think, because it's always public. Even we think it's not public. We always talk about if we're disciplining people, it's got to be definitely done in private. Yeah, definitely done in private. But still, people are watching. What about getting ideas? I see someone like you. You've come here. You've been in Japan a long time, 20 odd years. You've come up through different levels. You've got you tap into the entire world because you're a foreigner. You have a range of experiences which are beyond what the Japanese would ever have. You get lots of information globally. So you are also a guy full of ideas and energy. I can tell that straight away. So the danger of that, though, and I suffer from this myself, is that you tend to notice that after a while, all the ideas around here are mine. Where are the ideas from everyone else? Because I'm dominating the idea generation because I've got so many and my brain's creative and I drive it. And I have to tell myself, slow down, get their ideas too, because, they're closer to it in their departments or their responsibility than I am because I can't be everywhere. How about you? What have you found works well to get ideas from your team? From bottom up.
That's interesting, yeah.
Driving it down from the top, like I tend to do.
The ego sometimes, or the pride, could take over, and you may believe that you're the king and that all the ideas come from you, and thanks to you, the hotel is successful, which is not the case, obviously. I think once again, how to get ideas from my team. First of all, you've got to be very precise on what kind of team you want to build, right? So if I take my leaders around me, my directors, my excom, I'm very picky on my excom because I don't want anyone who looks like me. I want someone very different. I want someone with different skills, eventually different background, obviously, but I want someone who can challenge me when I start to have this ego or this arrogance or whatever it is, or when I think that I'm right, or when I believe that this is the only way to do things. No, I want someone to say, Maxime, sorry, you're the GM, and I appreciate you, but no, I mean, this is dangerous.
You've got 60-40 split here. I can imagine those pesky foreigners working for you will push back.
Some
what
of them,
about the 60% of Japanese who are trained to be obedient, follow orders, don't push back, don't question, don't raise your voice, keep a low profile, don't be a problem? How do you get that group to speak up?
Well, creating a safe environment to speak up is not easy, and it takes time, and good things take time, obviously. I think, again, it's being consistent in your attitude, your leadership, and also your feedback from the GM, from the director's level, from the excom, or all the managers. Being consistent in the feedback, positive or negative, right? And to always keep it cool and always keep it constructive as well, right? But of course, if you want to be bossy, like 20 years ago, when it shows a lot of insecurity.
Full force.
Full force.
Maxime.
And, exactly when 20 years ago, when I was 22, my first, manager role, and I was just like, well, I know more than you. And then I was like, but I don't speak Japanese. And by the way, I didn't know where Japan was on the map. And, it's different story.
I'm not going to let that worry me anyway.
Right?
Push forward.
And you just push forward. No, I think you've got to be reasonable, but you've got to accept that people are different. And accept also the fact that without people, you don't go anywhere. I mean, once again. So the experience in Japan overall is a very humble experience. But I would say that consistency, again, in the attitude, in the feedback, in the mood, in your leadership is very important for people to feel safe to speak up. Then you don't want to expose people. If I give a feedback to my director in front of his team or her team, that would be a disaster. He would lose trust.
He would lose face.
Oh, he would lose face. He would lose faith. And he would lose trust in me.
And he'd probably quit.
And most probably he will quit right away, or she will quit right away. And I would do the same.
And these days, because there's such a shortage of people in the hospitality sector because of COVID, and there's so many new hotels popping up all over the place, they are guaranteed of a job. They can walk out of here and get a job tomorrow with absolutely no qualms whatsoever, which was the case before COVID. That's changed the picture a lot. So as a leader, you've got to be very sensitive to that too and how you treat people. Whereas maybe before, okay, you screw it up yourself as a boss, but you can always get a replacement. You screw it up as a boss today, maybe it's very hard to get a replacement, and maybe the replacement's not going to be anywhere near as good as the person you had who's fully trained and knows how things work around here and just more capable. So I think there's a lot more onus on us as leaders to do a better job.
And I think I don't like to talk about numbers because numbers could be a tricky conversation, but I think at some point numbers don't lie. And if I take a look at the numbers at Klimpton, I'm talking about not the revenue or anything, I'm talking about the social numbers. We have a very low rotation rate. Actually, the retention is very good at Klimpton over the past 3 years, I would say, which is good, which is a good achievement. And like any hotel, like any business, we've got metrics, right, to measure our performance. But I would say that this metric, if we call it a metric, is definitely a key target for me because retention is very important. Transfer from Klimpton to another sister hotel is also a success, right? Or vice versa. It could be from a sister hotel to Klimpton, which is the scale merit of our group, right? We have every year in September an employee satisfaction survey, right? That happens globally in the world, within IHG. And in Japan as well, obviously. And in Japan, it's always difficult to drive satisfaction within the employees, right? We know that in the region, Japan tends to have a very low satisfaction score within the employees. And actually, I'm very happy to see that last year we had one of the highest in the luxury.
Did
We
you?
had the highest in the luxury and lifestyle hotels portfolio,
Wow.
and one of the
Congratulations.
highest in the whole market, right?
That's
in the whole
fantastic.
country. And I'm not saying this; it's not my success; it's a team success
Mm-hmm.
again. And that would be possible without my directors, without my excom. But again, that means somehow the message go through, and that means they have also a clear vision of what the goals to achieve are, how to get there, and they have enough resource to get there, right? So somehow the harmony, the balance is pretty good. But again, we've got so much space for improvement. I mean, I'm already thinking about tomorrow, how we can do to get
Endless
better.
improvement
And it's
possibilities.
endless, so much space for improvement. But that's also what keeps us alive, right? So
You mentioned before about, engaging with people, psychological safety, diversity, all these things. Apart from those things, what have you found works well to build trust with people?
visibility, definitely engagement, being visible, being engaging. And again, I come back on the word consistency, being consistent in your mood, in your attitude, in the way you greet your employees in the morning or in the afternoon. I know last time that's a funny story actually. A few months ago, I was going in the lobby and I was busy in my mind because I had an interview and it was quite an important one and for a key position, And I was trying to think about that one and what type of candidate I want, what kind of people I want for the team and for the business and stuff. And I went through the lobby and I pushed the button of the elevator to go up in the floor for the interview. And suddenly the concierge rushed in, and he ran and he said, Maxime. And that was in the afternoon. And I was like, yeah, how are you? And he said, good, but you didn't come to say hi. And I was like, oh my God, yes, you PM shift today. I didn't see you this morning. He said, no, I know you're busy and maybe you forgot me, and I said, no, I don't forget you. Sorry, my mind was somewhere else. And, for me, that was a good example on how much impact you have when you do it consistently and how people could be disappointed if you don't do it anymore or if you do it sometimes, but not always or not with the same genuine approach or the same intensity. And for instance, this gentleman was kind of surprised, not disappointed because he understands, he knows me, we've been working long enough together now. But then it was a good reminder for me that consistency in what we do, in the good things we do, in the approach we have, we take, and the engagement we have with our team is key to get them involved and to make sure that they embrace your leadership at some point, right?
When I hear that story, I'm imagining that individual was worried about you.
Maybe actually,
you changed your behaviour, and so something must be wrong.
Something happened.
So
there,
something's going wrong here. Something's wrong for Maxime. I'll just go and check. I had an experience recently. I get to the office pretty early, and one of my team was also in early. And I had an issue too. It was occupying my mind. And I didn't realize what was on my face, but it was worry. And he came over to me and said, are you okay? And that's when I realized, my usual ability to mask what's on my mind by not showing it on my face has slipped today. And as a leader, I can't afford the luxury of having mood swings. I can't afford the luxury of having what looks like a mood swing. I have to be positive, upbeat all the time, 24 hours a day, as far as they're concerned. So it just reminded me that my mask slipped a bit. He picked it up straight away. And I thought, okay, you didn't do a good job there. You were really concentrating on something and forgot what was on here. So, that's why I interpret,
that's a good point, actually.
I interpret what you just said as him worried about you.
He might have been worried, actually. I didn't think that way. I thought maybe I was worried that he was disappointed because I was not at 100% on that day. But actually, no, he was maybe just worried.
He was worried that something had happened to you and was worried about you. That's my guess anyway. What are the things you've found works well in terms of trust, in terms of building trust with people?
Well, participate into people's life, not in a private way, obviously, but also to know how to be a human at the end of the day, not always be a GM. And also just to I wouldn't go too far saying show vulnerability like any human in the world, but just to say that you're actually a normal person. And yes, you have a title and it goes with the responsibilities that the title suggests. But I would say that it's also to get down to earth and being back to the reality of human connections. And I think it's super important to show people that you're first and foremost a human being, and that you can listen to them if they want to share something with you, and you're happy to talk to them as well. And I wouldn't share so many things with them because I'm a leader, obviously, but just to have to make the level between each other equal, so they don't feel intimidated, they don't feel like threatened, or they don't feel like the GM is talking to them. You know, I'm not talking or engaging with them so I feel good about myself, or I feel good in my shoes as a GM. No, I want them to feel good in their shoes as employee, right? And feel happy to work in their hotels.
So your point about the human being and trying to have people see you as a human being, it's a great point. If you were thinking about giving advice to someone, say one of your friends or colleagues rings you up and say, "Hey, Maxime, I've got this big job running my company in Japan. I'm coming to Japan, but I don't know anything about Japan. How do I be an effective leader in Japan?" What advice would you give them?
Oh, wow. That's a cool question, actually. I like this one because, again, you could talk about for a day. I would say the number one would be to avoid stereotypes. And I would say that when you come to Japan, you're invited to come to Japan. So you don't want to come in Japan and show Japanese people that you know everything about Japan, or you know the culture, or don't assume things. Don't be curious. Be interested in what you see around. Talk to people and engage with them, because they would be happy to have you in Japan, right? But they are the host. You're the guest somehow. Even though you've got a company to run or you've got a position to take, I would say that avoiding stereotypes will make sure that you get the most of your experience in Japan. Another point, I would say, don't take anything for granted. And it's easy sometimes with the nature of Japanese people and the culture of courtesy that they have and civility that they have, to feel flattered or to feel recognized or to feel like being special, right? But I would say the performance speaks by itself, but your personality is also key. And they will be very sensitive in the changes of personality you may have, depending on the success you have. And I would say that you shouldn't take anything for granted. What you achieve today is great. Keep working on yourself in a humble manner, and think about tomorrow how to improve, because they will look at you as a role model if you do so. They will ignore you or not trust you if you don't do so, right? And the last point, maybe last but not least, and I take my own experience as an example, I would say that if you come to Japan, be ready to stay forever. And as we say, Japan, either you stay or you come back. So no matter what, even though you don't stay in Japan because you decide to go somewhere else, or your job, your work, your profession takes you somewhere else in the world, be ready to come back to Japan at some point. Even if it's just for the holidays, but Japan, it's too good of a country to actually go there once. You don't come here just once. You stay or you come back. So you have to be ready for that, I would say.
Good point. And I think there's also that question for leaders, like usually headquarters has some expectations of the leader around performance. And so they have this pressure on them when they get on the plane to go to Japan, thinking, "Oh, I've got to perform, or numbers have got to improve, or whatever it's got to improve." And then they get here, and so the way of doing things here is probably a bit slower, and in a different way to how things are done overseas. And then they've got to learn a lot of things. So, what's some advice on how to navigate between that headquarter pressure for change, rapid change, improvement immediately, and the way of doing things in Japan, which takes time, and it's not going to be rapid, and it's not going to be instant, and it's going to take time to work through it. So that juggling that balance is one, I think, the dilemmas for leaders who are sent here. What do you be some advice on how to navigate that?
Yeah, it's a tough question because it depends on a lot of factors, obviously. But it's interesting. Yeah, obviously, corporate and has always a vision, and you as a leader, you come here for a purpose and for a mission. Then how to achieve those goals, how to achieve this mission, you may find some quick wins. You may find some easy way to do things at first, and then you will face with the culture, and you will face with the nature of Japanese people being a little bit, not, I wouldn't say slower, but a little bit more questionable about what's going on around. They are more challenging, more resistant, I would say, than the people you are used to work with maybe in the past. But that's also a good thing because it does request you to improve yourself, your ability to send the message across, and to have enough humility to actually change your leadership style if you need to adjust, when you need to adjust, right? Then again, yes, the result might be a little bit slower to be visible, but it's deeper. And I would say that it lasts. So getting people on board with you, getting the trust from people and making relationship is super important. I rarely have seen, or not to say I never seen, actually a leader coming here 1 or 2 years and actually overachieve everything in 1 or 2 years. I don't know, you've been in Japan longer than me.
I've never seen that either.
But I don't think I can recall
that,
any.
I was thinking to myself, well, that would be an amazing result if that
Right?
happened, you know.
That would be amazing, and I would love to meet with this person. But I don't think anyone actually did. And good things take time, maybe more in Japan, I agree. But again, I think we've got as leader here in Japan, even if we are sent off by the corporate or for a specific mission, we've got to have a certain level of understanding and respect to people and to the culture here. And we've got to find some ways to go around sometimes the process. It's a lot of process, right? So how to gain trust, how to make relationship, how to get people on board with you. I think being visible once again, leading by example, inspire people and influencing people is definitely key. Having the big picture of your business unit or your mission, having the vision is super important as well to make sure that people bear with you, right? So yes, you will have some quick wins. Yes, you will have some good things happening in your early time because you just arrived and because you bring something very new. And then the resistance may come and you need to overcome that. And you've got to have this vision that takes you beyond, and you've got to understand how to team up with everyone around and with the culture as well. You can't avoid the culture, right? So,
What about the language? Should they learn Japanese?
That's a good question. I did learn Japanese actually, because at that time I was in Hokkaido and that was for me a way to survive, I would say. I think I always gave myself the freedom to stay in Japan as long as I could, or as long as I believe it's necessary to stay. And I've been here still 20 years, right? So I'm still here so far. But I learned Japanese because without the language, I would have missed a lot of people. I would have missed a lot of the culture, the country itself. But I know a lot of people that have been in Japan for a long time and don't speak Japanese, which is fine as well. That's their way to do things, their way to embrace things maybe, or... And it's often said that if you speak Japanese, it becomes more difficult to lead or drive people or manage people, because Japanese people assume that since you speak Japanese, you understand them. Well, yes, you understand them, you understand the culture, but it doesn't change the goal. It doesn't change the mission at the end of the day. So again, it's about articulating your vision and making sure you set the right goals and you take people on board with you. Speaking Japanese for me was a blessing. I mean, it helped me a lot, and it still does. And I wouldn't picture myself doing what I do today or over the past 20 years without speaking the language now.
What about your definition of leadership? How would you describe leadership?
Definition of leadership, I would say, in easy terms, it's making sure that you make the most of people, even though they already excel in what they do. And it's making the most of people, even though they are better than yourself. And I think being a leader is always look for improvement in people and for a way to support them in their growth and development. But as a leader, I think the worst could be to feel threatened by someone very strong or someone that seems or sounds better than you on the paper or even in the reality. This person might be better than you in some areas, at very specific skills because he's got or she's got some very specific knowledge or high level of expertise. But then as a leader, making the most of this person and still trying to improve this person makes you learn also, makes you develop yourself and makes you be the leader that he or she needs, actually. So yeah, I would stick to that. I would say that actually making the most out of people, even though they are better than you, is also a humble way to become a better version of yourself.
Well, fantastic
Greg,
discussion.
thank you for having me.
Thank you, Maxime.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
So please join us again for our next episode of Japan's top business interviews.